Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, let me extend a very warm welcome to all of you who have come to our old town hall in Bonn today. While preparing for today's event, I looked back and tried to count how many times the Right Livelihood College and the city of Bonn have already joined hands in the organization of an event. But to be honest, when I reached the end, I stopped counting. The 30th anniversary conference of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation in 2010 marked our first collaboration. At the time, more than 75 laureates of the so-called Alternative Nobelprize gathered here in Bonn for a week. Mr. Srinivas, who has joined us today on behalf of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation from Geneva, came to Bonn for the first time on that occasion. I'm sure you remember the very intense conference week. Welcome back to Bonn, Mr. Srinivas. Ever since this successful cooperation, the Bonn campus of the Right Livelihood College and the city of Bonn have worked together on at least one or two occasions a year. Since the official opening of the Bonn campus in 2011, the Right Livelihood College has become an active part of the international Bonn. In Bonn, you find a dense network of UN organizations, NGOs, and research institutions, all working with a focus on international development and sustainability. With this dense network, the RLC has successfully established links with quite a few partner organizations. At next week's Global Media Forum, for instance, Özgür Mumku from the Cumhuriyet newspaper, which received the award last year, will speak. Over the past years, there have been joint lectures with the United Nations University and other academic institutes. A special credit goes to you, Professor Yukana, and your dedicated team. Nowadays, the RLC Campus Bonn also serves as the General Secretariat for all RLC campuses worldwide. Throughout the years, the RLC has grown substantially. It now includes 8 campuses on all continents. Quite an achievement for the RLC with its main campus in Bonn. Thanks to the continuous support from the German Academic Exchange Service, annual workshops with you young researchers from all over the world could be organized here. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Gerhard. Thank you for joining us tonight as a DAAD representative. Another special welcome goes to you, the group of young researchers who have come together here in Bonn in this workshop to promote and discuss expertise and experiences with the laureates of the Alternative Nobel Prize, with scientists and practitioners. Over the past 8 years, the RLC has brought many acclaimed laureates to Bonn. Today, I have the special pleasure to welcome Mr. Abouleish. We feel very honored that you have come all the way from Egypt to Bonn to give us some insights into your important work. The panel is complemented by 2 representatives of organizations based in Bonn. Welcome to you, Mr. Arbenz from IFOAM, and to you, Mr. Weber from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Today's panel shows quite well what the International Bonn is about. Experts are coming together here, both from abroad and from Bonn, engaging in a fruitful dialogue on topical issues and searching solutions for the way forward. For all of the joint efforts in our international location, the sustainability perspective serves as the common umbrella. Today we are looking particularly at the role of agriculture and sustainable food production in this context. I'm sure we will hear some inspiring thoughts from this panel. With the same spirit, we are preparing for the climate negotiations in Bonn in November this year, COP23. I hope that Bonn will be the stage for future-oriented long-term global climate policy making. This will be hopefully support and advance sustainability in a similar way SEKEM does, the organization Mr. Abouleish will tell us more about shortly. I wish all of us a very inspiring evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mrs. Klingmüller, for this very warm welcome. And now it's my turn to also welcome you all to this very wonderful event in this wonderful old city hall of Bonn. A panel discussion that will be held on the topic of sustainable food, local solutions to global problems. The event is jointly organized by the City of Bonn and the Right Livelihood College, the campus of the Alternative Nobelprize at SEF. We are very grateful, and I think I also speak on behalf of my colleague Till Stellmacher and his team. He's the coordinator of the Right Livelihood College in Bonn, for the very good cooperation between both partners since 2010, when the first conference of the Alternative Nobel Prize laureates was organized in Bonn. I want to express my gratitudes to Gabriele Klinkmüller. Thanks a lot, Deputy Mayor, for hosting this event again. Special thanks go to Verena Schwarte of the Office of International Affairs and Global Sustainability of the City of Bonn as well, who supports us since long in organizing these activities. It should be mentioned that this public panel discussion is integrated in a 5-day RLC scientific workshop at SEF, in which a large group of PhD students from different countries, 16 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and Europe, of course, work together on the topic of sustainable agriculture and rural transformation, meeting farmers' needs in socio-ecological system, which is a big topic within the Agenda 2030. Of course, I highly welcome all the PhD students who participate in this workshop. You have been selected among more than 300 applicants to attend the workshop. Congratulations, and I hope that you really enjoyed the fruitful discussions during the last days. The RLC College in Bonn was established at SEF in 2011 as an integrated education and research program. The campus in Bonn is part of the global RLC network with 8 campuses at different universities worldwide. Among those, Lund in Sweden, in Mumbai is a campus in India, in Ethiopia at the Addis Ababa University, in Chile, Valdivia, in Nigeria, Port Harcourt, in Santa Cruz, California, and last but not least, in Cordoba, Argentina. In this context, we particularly want to thank the German Academic Exchange Service, who makes the realization of these different activities possible. They also supports the different scholarships for PhD students to conduct empirical research together with the Alternative Nobel Prize winners from all over the world. DAAD is in general a very important partner for CEF, and we are not just cooperating in this project, of course. Thank you, Mr. Lars Gerold. You're head of the section for development cooperation at DAAD, for the good cooperation and support. We would also like to thank Frau Ilona Daun and Frau Anja Munzig and Frau Skailes for the work and support for our team. Last but not least, warm welcome also goes to Sharan Srinivas from the Light Livelihood Award Foundation in Stockholm for coming to the workshop and being here with us and joining this very exciting panel discussion, and I'm really looking forward to it. And now I want to pass on to Lars Gerold for the next welcome address. Thank you.
Sehr geehrte Gabriele Klingmüller, sehr geehrte Eva Jukana, dear Sharan Srinivas, dear panelists, I'll come back to you later. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the German Academic Exchange Service, the DAD in German, I would like also to welcome you all here at the panel discussion tonight at the Town Hall of Bonn. In particular, I would like to express my very warm welcome to the participants of the Right Livelihood College campus event, which started already on Monday, and of course, especially to Helmy Abouleish. We are very glad that you shared your experience here today and your knowledge with the students, especially of the college, and well, that you made it here, because as I learned just a moment ago, it was, well, quite a trip you had to finish here in Bonn, to be here in time. Of course, I also send my warm welcome to the other two experts on the panel here tonight, Gerhard and Markus Arbenz, but there were a lot of words of thanks already mentioned, and I don't want to follow up on this, because I think, as always in this kind of projects, there are a lot of people working on it, and I think there were a lot of names already mentioned, and I think they really do a good job. But allow me also to congratulate the PhD students, because of course this is the key of what the DAT is standing for, that they are here and can spend the week at the Right Livelihood College here in Bonn. As this was already mentioned, you have been selected out of 300 applications. Well, there are 25 PhD students here. I learned from 16 countries, and this is really quite a big number, and I think this is really also the topic of the workshop is also quite challenging and interesting that we will learn also more about here today. But still, why does the DAT provide financial support for the Right Livelihood College campus here in Bonn? And this already for quite a long of time. And of course, well, first, we are in the quite comfortable position that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also the Ministry of BMZ for German cooperation is supporting us with funding. But still, we support this initiative because this is exactly what we stand for. We believe in education, especially in higher education. This is essential to be the most powerful driver for global and local change. Furthermore, our vision as a DAT is changed by exchange. This is our motto. We are sure that challenges nowadays in whatever issues and fields can only be met through vibrant exchange. We want to stimulate responsibilities and support of all those who feel challenged and called up by our vision and are committed to be agents of change. We believe that cooperation, the exchange of winning ideas, is an essential contribution to sustainable development. And these are the topic issues we all work here on. Linking personalities, such as the winners of the alternative Nobelprize, along with their practical experience, with young, excellent scholars focusing on development issues, is what we believe can make a change and a difference. Therefore, I wish us all a fruitful discussion and good lessons to learn for tonight. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Klingmüller, colleagues, dear friends, I just made a calculation that this is my 7th visit to Bonn in the past 7 years. This is truly a city that's close to my heart, and today marks a special milestone. It's 8 years since the Right Livelihood College initiative began in Penang, Malaysia, and there are today 8 campuses of the college thriving across 5 continents. And it's really symbolic that we are celebrating this here in Bonn. Why Bonn? Well, it's because 7 years ago, as you've heard, this city had its first encounter with the laureates of the Right Livelihood Award when it hosted the 30th anniversary conference. And it was love at first sight. As a city known for promoting international cooperation, embraced the Right Livelihood Award family, which is now a galaxy of 166 inspiring individuals and organizations dedicated to working for a better tomorrow. The fruits of this encounter have multiplied over these years. In 2011, Center for Development Research became the first Right Livelihood College campus in Germany, and it has since risen and become the jewel of the network. becoming the Global Secretariat in May 2014. And by now, ZEF is supporting 6 PhD students working to research Laureate's issues and topics. And it's also hosted a whole range of workshops on some of the most pressing challenges we face today, like today on food security. When we commemorate this 8 years and 8 campuses, I think it's pertinent to mention those without whom this wouldn't be possible. I want to first recognize the unequivocal and long-standing support of the current and former Lord Mayor of Bonn and all the officials and staff of the city who've kindly hosted several Right Livelihood laureates over these years. I'd also want to thank the German Academic Exchange Service, represented by Lars Gerald here, for their general financial support towards the RLC's activities and the PhD scholarships. And finally, I'd like to recognize the commitment and leadership of the University of Bonn under Prof. Dr. Eva Jokana and Prof. Dr. Solveig Gerke, but also to my dear friends Till Stellmacher and Timo Pokraka, who have been guiding this ship all these years with great passion and commitment. With that, I also have a special message all the way from Penang, Malaysia, from the director of the Right Livelihood College, Anwar Fazal, who sends his greetings, and he's written it in a form of a poem. And I'll start. 8 years ago, we began a journey to realize a dream that many thought impossible, to create the Right Livelihood College. We had a dream to make a synergistic partnership, a dynamic cooperative between universities and change makers, between centers of learning, of research, of intellectual excellence, and springs of action, candles of hope, magic of solutions, the spark of courage, and the spirit of solidarity. We had no budget, but the miracle of an enlightened university. The University Science Malaysia helped us under the bold leadership of Prof. Dr. Zulfikli, the Vice Chancellor. I had a supportive place. We had a hub of networks, an incubator of ideas, and a catalytic stream of activities for moving forward. We grew from Malaysia to Germany, to Sweden to Ethiopia, to Nigeria to Chile, to the United States, to India, to Argentina. With the tremendous support of the city of Bonn and DAD, we were enabled to make a surge in our activities. We fulfilled our dream to start a framework, but it's still a journey challenging cultures of violence, of manipulative and unethical politics and economics, of waste and even ecocide, some say. We're heading towards even more threatening times. Just remember the lives of the many Right Livelihood laureates. They made change happen, change for the better. More like them will inspire us. Just remember, little people in little places doing little things together can change the world. From Anwar and from the Right Livelihood Foundation in Stockholm, very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you very much.
Welcome, thank you, and happy birthday. That's what I want to say. My name is Merjam Wakili, and I will be the host tonight. And a very warm welcome also from my side to the 3 panelists. And let's go to the stage and start right away, because I know that you have plenty to tell and to share. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on other things. Yes, today's panel discussion is about sustainable food, local solutions to global problems, with a question mark. Meaning, one of the main questions can be, for example, can sustainable food production feed the world? And another question could be, can social entrepreneurship be a great solution for a global problem? So we have 3 panelists here who have a lot of ideas and who have shared those ideas many, many times, but I'm glad that you will share them today with us, with our guests today here in Bonn. And I would like to start by introducing our panelists, first of all. And I would like to start with Markus Arbenz. He's the executive director of IFOAM Organics International. It's the worldwide umbrella organization for the organic agricultural movement. It was founded in 1972 and it represents close to 800 affiliates in over 100 countries. We will learn more about it in a minute. And Gerhard Weber, you are a scout for international cooperation at the Chamber of Industry and Commerce here based in Bonn. And you support companies interested to do business with companies in the developing world. And you help them in their search for suitable partners. And Mr. Helmy Abouleish, we've heard a lot about you and your project, SEKEM. It's the Mission Impossible, as your father called it. It was founded in 1977 by your father, SEKEM. It's the first sustainable organic farming company, as we can call it, in Northern Africa. And before I start to tell more about it, we have prepared a short film which you can elaborate on to see the pictures, and you can just tell us what the miracle and what the Mission Impossible is about.
Yeah, this is the place where my father started 40 years ago. It was him on the picture. And this is how it looks like today. And this is why many call it a miracle. It is an oasis where about 30,000 people live around, and in this oasis 2,000 people work, 800 kids go to school, and 1,200 students go to the Heliopolis University for Sustainable Development. And it's a place where, through organic or biodynamic agriculture, a huge area of land has been reclaimed from the desert, and where these hundreds and thousands of people work to produce out of these biodynamic raw materials finished products for mainly the local market. So 80% of what we produce goes to the local market in Egypt. It's the biggest local market for Demeter products, I think, outside Europe, and for organic products in most of the African countries. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
So basically your father took the idea of sustainable agriculture, organic agriculture, brought it to Egypt and tried to make it possible in the desert. So how did it work? He did experiment a lot, I know that, and you started to work with him quite early in the 80s, so you also can be called as the first generation of SEKEM. So how did it work out, right in the middle of the desert?
I mean, why it's called the Mission Impossible? Because before he started, all the experts in Europe and Egypt told him it's not possible. There's nothing called organic or biodynamic agriculture in the desert. Now, he insisted that he wanted to do something. He insisted that he wanted to create a model not only for organic land reclamation, but also for community building in the desert, where people can live, learn, and work together. And so he started, and I think there are a lot of detours and many things, but compost, I would say, is, if I want to mention one thing, the most important ingredient of this success story. Compost enabled us to transfer dead sand into living soils with millions and billions of microorganisms enlivening the soil and providing us with crops and so on. And today, we know now backwards that this is a model to mitigate against the impacts of climate change, because we sequester carbon in our soils, millions of tons since we started. And it's a way to reduce the impact of the water scarcity issue, which is the biggest challenge for Egypt, because we reduce our water usage 20 to 40%.
What many people don't know is that agriculture is one of the biggest polluters and one of the biggest issue in terms of climate change. And that is an issue that is mainly the reason why you went into organic agriculture. So why isn't it a role model for other countries in the region? Because SEKEM, until today, is still the first and the last farm.
No, we are very optimistic. It will not be the last. It's the first, and it will end with all farms in the world being organic and biodynamic. So we are only on a path, and it seems still difficult and the mission impossible because there is always two doubts. One is, if we go to organic farming, can we feed all the people in the world, 7 billion, 8 billion, 9 billion, 10, 12, 15? And the second question, if we could feed all of them, isn't it too expensive for the poor populations in Africa, Asia, or America? And I think IFOAM, we, and the organic movement, researchers in the organic movement can today prove that we are not only able to feed the world what the quantity issue is in regard to the quantity issue, but we can also prove that organic and biodynamic farming is cheaper than conventional farming.
That brings me right to you, Mr. Arbenz. IFOAM is the acronym for International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movement. You started also in the 70s. So, and speaking of organic agriculture means we have to find standards. We have to define what organic means. So is organic, for example, in Nigeria equal to organic in Germany? And how do you find these standards?
Okay, thank you. A lot of questions at a time. And well, let me start with the history that you said. In fact, organic was not invented in one place. It's not like this that some authority in the world said, okay, this is organic now. But no, it was invented in many places around the world, and many inspiring people had same or similar ideas. You know, for example, in Japan, for cocoa, or Albert Howard in the UK, which got the inspiration in India. We had Steiner, of course. We had Anna Primavera in Latin America, in the United States. Everywhere there are people that had similar ideas that came actually from from the question of how do we do agriculture, how do we feed the world in the future. And it came actually also a lot when the Green Revolution started, and the general belief was for feeding the world we need actually chemical agriculture, and we need actually all these inputs, and we need these high-performing varieties, otherwise it won't work. So this narrative, this belief started very much, and a lot of people questioned it. And yes, you rightly mentioned that of IFOAM Organics International is the umbrella, and that was the first time we had to bring people together under the same idea. And under that same ideas, we had a time and where we had to unite actually the idea and also question what is it exactly. And here you come to the standard and say, yes, somehow there is a moment that you have to say that we talk about the same things, particularly because it's a complex issue. It's not only about one thing. It's not only about no pesticides or no GMO. It's about the complexity that Helmy also actually talked about community. It's about the livestock, about animals. So
it's a holistic approach that you seek, but still,
absolutely.
If I buy something organic food in Nigeria or Uganda or China, is it the same, has it the same quality than in Germany?
Yeah, I come to that actually. Yes, it's not the same, because we also don't want that it's the same, because it needs local adaptation. That's really what you want. It has to make sense in a community, in a context, which is an environmental context, because the climate in Uganda is not the same than in Germany, for example, and also in Sweden or in Iceland we have different conditions. But we also have different societies, and we have different systems from the governance system, so how we think and how we approach things. Now, if it comes to the question whether it comes to trade, if you get here in Germany a product which comes from Nigeria, then it has actually the same standards, because only if it's actually the same standard you're allowed to trade it internationally. However, if you look at the local situation, then it has to make sense to the local community.
So SEKEM is a member of IFOAM, and what about the other members? What kind of cooperation do you have, or how do they bring in their ideas into what IFOAM is trying to advocate?
Right, we talked about the holistic approach, so farms, enterprise is actually one type of members, but there are many other types of members. There are NGO, there are activists, there are certifiers, there are governments. either on national level, but also on local level. Like, for example, the city of Bonn is now not member, but it's basically entitled to be member. So there we have a lot of communities, particularly in Asia. They're quite eager actually to join that movement and to be part of it. And we have trade fairs, we have, I don't know what, name it. There is, because organic agriculture is not just agriculture and the standards, it's a holistic system that we want to approach. And we try actually to develop a little bit ahead. And that brings me to the strategy also that Helmy said. It's not a total revolution that you say we do something totally crazy, totally different. No, we want to be ahead of development. We are always a step ahead. And we realize that when you go to the shop, you find that organic products are slightly more expensive, but they're only slightly more expensive. It's just a step more. And it's not that you can say, okay, if you go to have an organic egg, it's from an ideal world. It's just a little bit better. It's not perfect.
Mr. Weber, you are trying to promote the idea of cooperating, German companies, for example, cooperating with companies in the developing world. So what kind of companies are really interested in cooperating with companies in the developing world?
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me, because I think it's important to mention that nowadays, if we talk about development cooperation, that the private sector is always on board. That was not the case like 10 years ago, but nowadays it's a usual thing, and therefore thank you for inviting me. Coming to your question, at the end of the day, there's pretty much all kinds of companies are interested to collaborate with partners in the developing world, because we have a very diversified structure. But
can you give us one example?
Yeah, I have thought about what example would be easy to understand, and so if you think what kind of industry is very well known for Germany, we can see that the solar industry, photovoltaic industry, was very good, very successful for the last 15, 20 years, but nowadays they have big problems. Especially we can see it here in Bonn with the company Solar World. But so what is happening? Many of those companies, they're looking for new markets in developing countries, and so some of them, they approach me, they ask me, can you give me some advice, some hints whatsoever. And
how do they know about you?
They know about me because when we have articles in our membership journal about my work, but there are also conferences like the 11th of July, we will have a conference on Africa in the chamber, so I invite you already to come on the 11th of July. But it's also mouth-to-mouth propaganda. Like I also sometimes approach companies at events, I call them and explain them about my work. But let me come to the example. So we have these solar companies in Germany, and many of them who are based here in North Rhine-Westphalia, they are also very close connected to the Energy Agency North Rhine-Westphalia. It's a state-owned organization based in Düsseldorf, and they are supporting, for example, photovoltaic companies in their work. And now, how can they find markets and partners in developing countries? Here in Bonn, we have GIZ. I think all of you know GIZ. They have, for example, one program which is called Powering Agriculture. And when we talk about powering agriculture, we talk about a sustainable way of powering, meaning using renewable energy solutions. So, and now this is my part comes into play because as somebody working very close in this development area, I knew about the program, but I also, since I work at the chamber, know the Energy Agency. So I talked
you bring them together?
Yeah. So okay. I talked to both of them, and it turned out that the GIZ program, they're looking for companies who are interested to work with this program in countries and to become trainers for energy solutions, for example, solar drying of products, or solar pumping nowadays.
So sustainability is something that is really important also if in search for companies that can collaborate. It's not just that any company can come and say, oh, I'm really interested in going into the market in sub-Saharan Africa, for example.
Yeah, I mean, if you see this example, working with GIZ means that they would not collaborate with you as a private company if you are not willing to accept certain standards in the way of collaborate. Meaning, you have to accept social standards, environmental standards, and otherwise there would no way of collaborate.
So sustainability also for you, Mr. Abouleish, is the main narrative, your father's narrative and your narrative. So what does it mean to have a holistic, sustainable approach? If we have a look at SEKEM again, what does it mean?
It basically means that if we would consider SEKEM an organic or biodynamic farm in the desert, I wouldn't be here today. SEKEM would not exist and not survive. So beyond agriculture in the desert, we needed to work on the other dimensions. So this miracle of SEKEM was only possible because from the very first day we set up agriculture, but we also set up, for example, economic development. We have thought, how can we add value to the raw materials we grow in the desert and sell them as a finished product to the local market, where the raw material price in the end in a tea bag or in a juice is only representing 10 or 20%. And hence, even if we have a higher raw material price, we can absorb it, we can compete on the local market. So economic development, and then adding into this economic development also the dimension of what we called then economics of love, and what is called fair trade maybe today, a transparent supply chain. A supply chain where everyone cares for the other one, where we have fair prices, where we have true costing, and where in the end everyone has enough to sustain his lifestyle, to develop himself, him and his family and so on, and not only to maximize his profits. So from the very beginning we had a concept for economic development which was based on solidarity.
So it's a whole way of living and a way of thinking which seems to be completely new to also the Egyptian society. As I saw in the films on the internet, the teacher is welcoming each and every student in the morning. So and you have also the idea that this economy of love, and you have transferred it also into a university for sustainable development on the campus or in SEKEM. Do you think that this holistic approach can be a blueprint for other countries?
I think it's the business model for the future. I'm happy to hear my colleagues here on the panel on this, but I believe there is no other way for the 21st and 22nd century for development beyond sustainable development. We will not be able to sustain our Earth, our own development and the development of nature unless we combine ecological development, economic development, social and cultural development in a holistic way. And this is exactly what we try to do. And I spoke about agriculture and economic development, but SEKEM would not exist only if we would have agriculture and economic development. It was also our efforts in creating a community, a learning, living community, having a circle, greeting everyone every day, considering ourselves a family, which every day asks itself, what are we going to do new today? And how can we respect the woman like the man, the Christians like the Muslims, the old like the young, and the Europeans like the Egyptians? How can we inject this kind of feeling of a big global family in this spot? This is part of the miracle. And without it, it would not have worked. And finally, all these educational efforts which I spoke about, without our kindergarten, SEKEM would not exist, as it would not exist without our university, without our efforts to really inspire our people, give them the tools to ask questions and to develop and unfold their own potential, and to inject a new educational model in Egypt and in our countries, which is not built on the belief we can put knowledge into the brains of the young people, but instead it gives the context in where the young people can unfold what is in them and can start to learn and start to learn asking questions.
But can knowledge really feed the world?
I think you mentioned it, somebody here mentioned it. I strongly believe that education is the most important tool for transformation and for a better future. And hence, it's the best long-term investment, and it always will change the world in whatever direction. And this is why it's so impossible to have a responsible way of building an educational model.
But Mr. Arbenz, you're nodding and you heavily agree. But what do you tell the critics that say we need more than knowledge, we need to feed the world, and we need tons and tons of fertilizers and chemical pesticides to do so, and they're quite successful. So what do you tell those critics?
Well, first of all, let us remind what is sustainability. Sustainability means actually that we give the next generation the same opportunities as we have ourselves. I mean, that's Helmy reminded us about that. And in that sense, one can say we can only feed the world sustainably or not at all. Because if we don't do it in a sustainable way, then we get less and less resources. And with these less and less resources, it's more difficult to do that. So now what the strategies that you were referring to is actually to say, okay, well, let's admit that we have less land resources per capita, and that we have degradation of land, and that is getting worse and worse. And we have at the same time more and more people. So this is the trap, which is this kind of thinking leads us into it.
But why are they so successful?
I think that's successful because it has so short-term temptations in it. Because very short-term you say, okay, I see a business opportunity, I want to jump into that, and there is an easy solution. It's like if I have a headache, I go to the pharmacy, I eat an aspirin and it's solved. And it's a very short-term solution because we don't go actually to what really is the root cause of it. And it doesn't think systemic, it doesn't think in a long-term way, and that is not sustainable. You know, we use now this term sustainable, but it's probably the most misused term in the world because we hear it everywhere and all the time. You know?
That's true.
And it's where we started to talk about true sustainability, to emphasize that we really mean it.
Makes it better, yes.
Yeah, we really mean it in that sense, actually, that I tried to mention before, which, by the way, is also the official definition by the United Nations. So it's not a new thing, but that's agreed for a long time. And because it's so much agreeable, actually, and people don't want to really behave in it, they misuse that term.
But still, what hinders the farmers, for example, to go into organic food production? I know that the certification process is really expensive. They have to spend 10,000 to 20,000 euros to get a certificate or to go into sustainable food production. It's much cheaper for them and quite tempting, as you said, to use the conventional farming methods. So what is hindering them and how can you promote it more?
Well, let me challenge first this 10 to 20,000 certification is not true. Actually, particularly, I mean, for example, in Austria, Helmy is also partly of Austria. I know that certification costs 100 or 200 per year for a small farmer. So
I have the example of Uganda.
I know that there are such kind of big farms and are remote, and so special cases there are like this, which is actually a problem. I admit that, you know, but it's not always and everywhere the case. But what I can say also, organic farming is not defined by the way we make a conformity assessment. Not assurance is important, but the practice is important. We define actually by the way the farming is happening, and not by the way whether there's certification or not. That is actually not the issue, and it's even not our vision that we say at the end of the day everybody is certified organic. If Helmy says my vision is actually that everybody farms organically, he means a practice and not certification. So this is actually one part of it. The other part of it is actually also how do we have our systems. Helmy reminded us before, said okay, we will be cheaper if we do all it organically. And why is that not cheaper right now? It's because of the frame conditions we have, because the way actually everything is organized and the way we pay actually for our what we call external costs, and we are rewarded for our external effects. And the technical term we use for that is true cost accounting. So what we are actually not have the truth of the cost. I'll give you a small example. It was last night in the media that in Switzerland they found out there is too high pesticides in the water.
In Germany.
Well, Germany, same, France, we know it, but it was just because it was last night in the media, I have it so present. And what happens there? The farmers, they're shocked. They say, but I follow all the instruction. I do everything according to what is allowed. And he does not have to pay the bill for that, because somebody else foots the bill for that. The same thing if the same farmer is producing a very nice landscape for tourism, and this is happening, he's not rewarded for that. So once actually we really can achieve, and Helmy made studies about it, and he can tell himself about these studies actually, to find out that when we really do a true cost accounting, our maths looks totally different, and then the incentive to go organic is totally different. So this is one very important economic aspect. The other one was already mentioned, I think, awareness. It has also to be rewarded not only economically, but also in the society. At the moment, a farmer in his society is a foolish guy if he goes to organic, because of it's not fancy to go work by hand, to have these very complex solutions. And
yeah, I know that you said the farmer should spend more time on the tractor, more time in the stable, and less on the desk. So this doesn't really sound quite innovative, does it?
It is innovative because actually we want to have it in the field and not actually managed actually from remote somewhere. And we have to think, we have to work with the system and not make it a virtual system.
But what does it mean? I mean, if there's a farmer who wants to be innovative or who wants to use technology, are you going to tell them, no, please go on the field and handle it?
Absolutely not. No, no, no. Organic farming is based on tradition and science. That's how we define it. So the science, actually, innovation is we will have in a few months the Organic World Congress in India. We'll all come together, thousands of people. Helmy will have a keynote speech there. And the most important topic of the conference will be innovation. How can we innovate? And if we say knowledge, it's about innovative knowledge. The question is, what kind of innovation? And the question is, how do we actually make it a very smart system? How do we influence the system together with nature and not against nature?
So innovation, Germany is quite known for innovations and German companies as well. So how can innovative German companies go and work together with companies in the developing world? How can you give them the incentive of it's a win-win situation, let's go and do this?
Well, companies are always looking for markets and for possibilities to work. And when we talk about innovative companies, I think you're absolutely right that in Germany, especially those companies who are the mid-sized companies, like the hidden champions, they very often have technical solutions which are asked for in developing countries, like solar drying, solar pumping, whatsoever. And your question, how they come together, this is the really difficult part, because many of those companies, they are working in their own business environment, and they do. Some of them have never been to other continents, and so what we try to do is with our conference, with our events, like business meetings with, for example, chambers from abroad, we invite them on certain occasions. For example, In September, we will have a conference here in Bonn about digitalization in certain sectors, and one of the sectors will be agriculture.
Uh-oh. What about the farmer on the field
No, I
with
would
his smartphone?
No, the point is, I think, I mean, I like organic agriculture, but I think every farmer is, in the first place, interested to produce a high-quality product, and if possible, in an organic way. So if so I would say, if I, as a farmer in Kenya, can produce with my smartphone on the field, or let's just give this one example. You have you're in a place where it's difficult to bring your product to the market, but then you have your cell phone or your smartphone, and as soon as you have your mangoes ready to sell to the markets, you can call the dealers, you can call your clients and tell them, look, I have 20 tons of mango, they will be ready in a few days, are you interested, how much do you pay? If you do not have a cell phone, you load your mango on a truck, you drive to a place, you have no buyer, and then you lose.
Okay, Mr. Arbenz, is that okay? Using
Absolutely.
this? Okay.
No, but so coming back to this conference, when we talk about digitalization in agriculture, there are many opportunities, and like your question, how do we bring innovative German companies together with companies from abroad? There are many, especially here in Bonn, we have a lot of software engineering companies who have developed products and they never thought about applying them.
And what is the benefit? What do you tell them? What is the benefit for such a startup, for example, to go into sustainable agriculture, for example?
Well, there are different companies have different motivations. First of all, they need to pay the workers, the people who are employed, so they have to make money, and of course the owner wants to have some revenue. But there are also companies more and more every day who are the so-called social entrepreneurs, and I also have very good examples here from Bonn. We have two companies who, one is called Magmo, it stands for Magic Moringa, and the second one is called Estancia Verde in Troisdorf. They are also dealing with Moringa. Moringa is a plant, you know it, of course, you grow it. I would say 90% of you do not haven't heard of it. Moringa is a plant with probably the highest concentration of nutrients, and it's used to serve your body in many ways. So it's kind of medicine, but you add it to your daily food, and you usually feel better. So these two companies, we have formed a round table at the chamber. We have other companies and organizations being part of this roundtable. Their motivation is to do some business, to live from the business, but mainly to do something good. And I'm quite positive that we will achieve something. And now we have a next person who will join the table in our next meeting, I hope.
Mr. Abouleish, social entrepreneurship, it sounds like they're quite altruistic and want to do good, but they also want to earn money. So do you think it's contradictory to earn money, to make money, and have the social things in mind as well? Is that a contradiction?
I think this is the only way of entrepreneurship of the future. Hence, it's not contradictory at all. We have to define what it means making money. If profit maximization is the only thing in my mind, then it's contradictory. But if having an added value, which supplies me and everybody else in the company with a decent livelihood, then it is the right thing to do. And so I think the way forward for entrepreneurship is to have entrepreneurs who are efficient, profitable, productive from the one side, but also have all the other dimensions of development in their mind and know that they have kids and grandchildren, most probably, and that they have today to prepare for them the world in a way that they can also prosper in the future and not finish everything the quickest possible way today as there is no tomorrow. If you allow me, I know that you have a long list of questions and so on, but I have two things which I would like to just give you my perspective on. The one thing is, you asked why isn't organic or biodynamic farming yet taking off, being mainstream, hitting this critical mass issue of renewable energy, for example. Renewable energy, which started after the organic movement, basically. At a certain stage, when it reached 20 or 25%, it went mainstream. And today, the world is speaking about the renewable energy world. And I think the same is going to happen with organic and biodynamic. The problem of organic and biodynamic up till now is that the paradigm shift in our minds did not happen, that we don't yet believe that the discussion of tomorrow is not why organic or biodynamic are more expensive. It will be a discussion why we are how many percentage cheaper than conventional farming. And that this is the case already today and the people don't recognize it. Externalizing of costs is still a big game, a big economic game, not only of industries and service providers, but also in agriculture. But the reality, we did a study for Egypt for the most important food crops. Biodynamic farming in Egypt is cheaper for the national economy, for the consumer, for the taxpayer. But it doesn't show on the shelf, and this is the problem. Up till now,
why
it doesn't show.
Why don't you go and spread the word?
And we
you
lobby
have studies,
for it.
So this is quite valid.
We lobby for it. IFOAM lobbies for it. Demeter lobbies for it. Everyone lobbies for it, day and night. But there are also huge interests behind keeping the status quo. There are winners of the status quo. There are winners of the game of depleting the resources of the world and destroying our resources. And
You're
these
nodding
winners
again,
are strong.
Mr. Arbenz, who are those?
Yeah, well,
Those enemies.
No. It just when you talked, it reminded me the talk with Alexander Müller. Some of you may know him. I asked him exactly the question. I asked him.
Who is it, please?
Alexander Müller. He used to be a director in the FAO, and also he's very well known in Germany from the Green Party in his engagement there in the Potsdam Institute. So the question was actually, and he's very often in international negotiations, and the question was exactly, why doesn't he take off the message when everybody agrees that there is no alternative to sustainability? And why don't we have, for example, in climate agreement, always excluded the agriculture? Never it turns up where, even though nearly half of the footprint goes back to the food system. And his reply was crystal clear, saying there is too much vested interest in it. And the governments, the industry doesn't like to touch it because they would touch huge interest. And we have come a far way with concentration of the industry. We're talking now about the merger of Monsanto and Bayer. We're having now Chemtech and Syngenta. So they go together, and we have basically huge corporates which are bigger than states. We have to be aware that the Bayer budget is bigger than most of the African countries, maybe including Egypt. I don't know exactly, but more or less. So these are huge powers without being controlled by democratic mechanisms. They are controlled by their shareholders, but the shareholders actually reduced to the dividend and not actually to a holistic sustainable development. And all these interests actually are so critical that people or the governments, they don't dare to touch agriculture.
So
and this is
would
very
you say
sensitive.
it's a lack of political will to stop those big?
I mean, what Helmy says, it is a lack of political will, I mean, you didn't say that the big game in your thing was actually the fertilizer subsidies in terms of the petrol. The petrol is subsidized, and subsidizing petrol, also the fertilizer are subsidized. So if that would abolished, that would actually give a lot of economizing to the Egyptian state. But they would never do it because it would go on the food price, the bread price. And the bread price, actually, if it goes up, this can actually remove governments. So if the bread price goes up, actually, all these governments, they are scared, actually, that the streets will burn and people stand on the street.
But you Westerners are always too impatient. the story is going to happen within the next 100-200 years. It is going to happen. It's deemed to happen. The change is going to come.
We won't live any
But your grandchildren will be very happy then. And now just prepare for them the right ground. It doesn't matter whether it happens tomorrow or not, but the right things are going to happen out of our wisdom or out of crisis. But they will have to come because the resources are going to be depleted. Phosphate is going to be depleted. Energy is going to be different. Prices will go up. Water will be a scarcity. The biggest scarcity issue in Egypt is not climate change, it's water. And so all these things are going to adjust, and the governments will not be able to step in everywhere and pay all these bills on our behalf, because who is paying for the tax? In the end, for the government, it's the taxpayer. So things will sort out, and the right things will prevail, and the organic movement will be mainstream. There is no doubt for me.
If I can just quick one to Helmy, because I have
and
one
then
disagreement
I will
here.
open up the discussion to the audience as well, because I suppose there are a lot of questions.
May I just respectfully address one disagreement, and this is Helmy. If you say it happens because of all this disaster, I think it's not only the disaster that it will happen, it's also innovation that will happen. We talked about innovation before. And let me just throw in one small example, the weeding robots. Nowadays, we just spray all the fields with these pesticides, with weedicides. And what happens actually that this goes to water and all these stories. Now, technology comes with weeding robots, and these weeding robots may be much more precise and much more cheap in the future, and then it will be obsolete to use that. So there is also...
How do they work? Give us...
that's a small
picture.
machine, maybe like this, and then that picks actually, and it has a camera. Like a Google car, exactly, driving, or like these vacuum cleaners in the apartments that just drive over the fields, and instead of cleaning, it picks the weed. Just with their small hand picks it. It's still under development because they don't recognize the plants perfectly yet and this kind of thing. But it's a matter of 10 or 20 years, and then we will have the perfect weeding robots. And with that one, we don't need it anymore, these herbicides.
And what about the farmer who has to be on the field?
He will watch the weeding robot.
Okay, so let us...
He will receive a training time.
Let us open the discussion to the audience. So are there any questions from your side to our distinguished panelists? Yes, we'll have a microphone for you as well. No, it's... You share it, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I am Wakili. I'm from Mauritius. So, in fact, my question is mainly on the future of agriculture and adoption of organic agriculture and its different standards. Like, agriculture is becoming labor-intensive in itself nowadays. And like, if we have less farmers and people more going for innovations and going for new technologies, don't you think that this will impact the future in itself? Less farmers, more dependence on technologies, so more pollution in a way? So this is my question. Thank you very much.
To Mr. Arbenz, I guess.
No, I guess it's both is connected a little
Okay.
bit. So I just have one question to Mr. Abouleish. My second question, please. Mr. Abouleish, I mean, changing a desert into an oasis, it's quite it's very difficult. I mean, it's a miracle, right? But I think that, you know, a desert has a very, how do we say it, a very difficult climate in itself. So during the years, I mean, it's a long-term work that you have been doing. I guess the climate has been changing a lot. So what can you say about it? Maybe like it was an arid region, like it's like a subtropical. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll start with your first question. Okay.
Well, I'm quite happy for this question, grateful for it, and it leads us actually to the thinking that we have to adopt it to the present situation. And we cannot just say, okay, and we cannot make blueprints. We cannot just situation like this and where you have to shift over. I totally agree with you that labor-intensive agriculture might be more appropriate, but even in, let's say, remote or poor areas, labor gets scarce at one time, and then there is a whole development needed at that. But it's very important that we make the equation actually with people and not against people, so that we don't just think system and what is most efficient and the products and everything, but that we think actually the population, the communities in the development of the systems, and they start at one situation, but they will evolve over time.
So to continue on this thought before I answer your second question, our experience in SEKEM is there is another threat in agriculture worldwide. And so we have to de-link the question of people working in agriculture from the question of the future of work. What is the future of work going to look like for my grandchildren and the grandchildren of the farmers around us? And I think we need to think about it. We need to think, and I think there is enough work, enough jobs for everyone on the planet and planning to come to this planet. But the question in particular to agriculture is, what we see today is not an issue of too many farmers don't finding jobs. The real issue in Egypt and the real issue in Europe and many other countries of the world is that you don't find farmers. And the rural areas are deserted and return to desert because there are no people who would like to stay. They all prefer to come to Bonn and spend 2 hours from Düsseldorf airport to Bonn on 60 kilometers. This kind of things. You can't understand them. Me and you, we can't understand them, but they love it. And so the question is, how can we make the rural areas again cultural places? Places where the people love to stay. Places where the people prefer to stay than to stay in the cities, where they find communities, where they find social offerings, cultural programs, where they want to be and find a job. This is another challenge. And I think it's de-linked from the question who is going to weed the fields. It's a question of a concept of community building. And rural communities are linked to agriculture. And the word agriculture is a beautiful word. It's not this strange German Landwirtschaft, it's agriculture. It's based on culture. It's when humanity meets nature and creates culture. This is where agriculture comes in. And there we have to rethink the idea of agriculture and community building and the nucleus of the new community in the rural areas. We have to rebalance this issue of the cities getting 60% of people and 40% and everyone running to the cities. So I think there is an interesting question where we have to continuously think about. But the second question you had, is the climate changing? In our context, it's not changing quick enough for us to sense the difference today. But we already know what is going to happen. We know that humidity is going to increase. We know that malaria is going to come up to Egypt and will reach Greece in 60, 70 years, and so on and so on. So we know climate change is happening because we don't move quick enough on it. And we know that Egypt is going to be the second most impacted country from climate change in the world. So we are going to lose the livelihoods of 7, 8 million farmers in the delta because the sea level rise of 1 meter will put them out of work. We know all this, but we don't react still. And then there are real important politicians out there in the world who still doubt the question of climate change. So I only can wish them good luck.
Yeah, we have a question over there in the... Yes, you can ask your question in German and the panelists understand.
Okay, ich habe eigentlich eine direkte Frage dazu. Also es ist ja ganz wunderbar im Sinne von Deserts oder Wüsten oder wüstenähnliche Gebiete oder sei es marginalisierte Zonen sollten wieder mit landwirtschaftlich gefüllt werden oder dass Leute wieder zurückgehen aus den Städten. Nur die Frage ist der Besitzverhältnisse. Also wie soll das geregelt werden? Wem gehört das Land? Ist es nicht letztendlich eine politische Aufgabe, Entscheidungen zu treffen? Und lassen sich Großgrundbesitzer darauf ein, zum Beispiel, dass die Leute zurückkommen?
So the question of ownership, who owns the land and who has to coordinate all this? Is it a political task?
I believe it's a task of humanity. There is currently something going on which is unprecedented over the last thousands of years. A piece of land in Egypt, agricultural land in Egypt, you cannot buy it and grow on it anything economically. And the same is happening in Germany, when I ask my fellow farmers here in Germany, and the same is happening in the US, and the same is happening in India. So there is the speculation of land, the issue of interest on, I don't know what, the issue of inflation, the issue, many questions in the national economic arena come together to make land too expensive for agriculture everywhere in the world. So we have to find new ways of organizing land, freeing land from this issue of a high price to provide people the possibility to grow on them food, because in the end we are not going to eat the technology nor the iPhones, we are going to eat carrots. Okay? So this is the good news. We need carrots. But the other question is, who is going to tackle this question of this speculation? I think we have to rethink our economic system. We have to rethink ownership, we have to rethink money, we have to rethink the commons, we have to rethink many things. And this is why I'm so happy to be here with PhD students in a university, because this is the place where the new ideas have to come from. And we have to get rid of the religion and the paradigms of Adam Smith and whatever he is now living at the moment in everywhere in the world, in Egypt, as in the US, as in Germany. So I think, yes, there is something out there. And it has nothing to do with big or small holding farms. For me, I think the issue is it's a mess up in our way of thinking about the reality. But ownership in the future, I'm sure, personally, and SEKEM is not owned by my family anymore. Farms and farmland shouldn't be owned by private persons. Companies in the future will not be owned by private persons and will not be at the stock exchange. They will be owned by themselves, and it's about the work and the service they provide. Now, how to do it is the other question. So I'm not giving you all the solutions, but rethink it and dare to think the mission impossible.
Okay, we had two questions in the last row, and then you, and then you two.
Thanks for this discussion. It's really nice. My name is Isra Gabal. I'm from Egypt, and I'm doing my master on agricultural sciences and crop conservation. My question to Mr. Abouleish, I was just wondering, when you were talking about SEKEM, to somehow I feel like it's a country within a country, because you have your own people working and going to the schools, doing researches. So I was wondering if there's a kind of cooperation between the National Research Center in Egypt and your studies, or I mean, usually if you want to set a farm or something like this, you have to do some studies on the cultivation plants. And also, I was wondering about the reaction of people towards the organic market, because as far as I know, especially in the Middle East, the culture of quality is not widespread. It's about quantity. So I didn't see, like in many places, organic products on the shelves. And another thing is your answer regarding the last question is about the ownership of the land. Because I guess the situation in Egypt, I don't know, maybe it's something misunderstood with me, but I feel like it's different from Germany than in Egypt, because in Egypt, it's not necessary to be interested in agriculture, and you can buy the land from their owners, even if you don't know or you will not use it in agriculture. It's a kind of safe money. And you know this quite well from people who are working in the Gulf and come back and buy a lot of places, a lot of lands without any need. So,
okay, three questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum ya Isra. Kullu sana tayyiba. I think we will have a long discussion when you are back in Egypt, and I invite you to SEKEM and show you around. But to give you now a quick answer to what you just said, we are cooperating with all the research institutions in Egypt and with the universities and with European institutes and with the experts. And we are learning every day, and we have a lot of problems. And most of our issues are not solved on the level we would like to solve them. Okay? So there is still a lot for you to do when you come back. And the The other issue of speculation on land in Egypt being different to the speculation of land anywhere else, it's exactly the same Adam Smith thinking. Huh? I save a little, I grab a little bit of piece of land, whether it's for agriculture or not, because I know in the future the land price will go up, and so it's more safe than being cash money in the bank. So let's keep it in land, and then it goes up, and then I sell it future, and all this kind of thing. It's one way of thinking, whether it's for building a building, whether it's for giving it to my kids, whether it's for agriculture. The way of thinking is wrong, and we have to rethink it. So, but I'm very happy to have somebody from Egypt here, because together we can solve the issues of Egypt much quicker than I can do it alone here.
Okay, next to you there was another lady. Okay.
Yes, thank you first of all for your very interesting talk. My name is Isabel Naguib. I am one of the ambassadors for food sharing here in Bonn. And since we are well concerned with food waste, my question is to Mr. Abouleish and maybe also to Mr. Arbenz. Do you somehow tackle this issue of food waste? Because it's a huge part of sustainability, and I mean, if you're talking about a holistic approach, I would also, think about food waste in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
In Egypt, 50% of the food produced on the land is lost on the way to the consumer. And then, in Egypt, Isra is sitting beside you, ask her about the tables in Ramadan, the size, the quantity of food, and the number of people on it. And then 20% of what reaches is going to the waste again. Huh? So can you imagine the efficiency? Can you imagine the opportunity for us to improve on this? And so we are working on this question day and night in SEKEM, but also with our partners. And I'm happy we are working currently with BMZ and GIZ on a major project with hundreds of smallholders in the Upper Egypt region on this issue, how to reduce this 50% first. The 20 are more a cultural issue, which needs more education and other things. But yes, of course, it's unbelievable.
May I just...
Yes, sure.
Yeah, I mean, for example, when it comes to food waste, the issue, like you said, you're working with GIS, BMZ in Egypt. There are also programs in Kenya tackling these issues, again with digital technology, but also more conventional. There are producers of silos in Germany. They are going, for example, to Tanzania. They connect themselves with cooperatives, and if they are going into a project with them and they bring technology, they can receive funding from BMZ. They can receive up to 200,000 euros. It's a private-public partnership model, and this involves usually training of the local people so that you transfer the know-how. And so, I mean, this aspect is very well known, and it's many people try to tackle it, but it's such a big problem that it's hard to see those pilot initiatives in the big ocean of problems.
Professor Yukanat, you had a question, and then we have those two and you, and then I think as a timekeeper I have to say it's the last question.
Yeah, thank you very much for this inspiring panel discussion. I really enjoyed listening to you. And I share your optimism, even though I'm a bit critical about it. You just mentioned that we will shift the development and we will have in either 100 or 200 years organic farming everywhere. I just learned that in Germany, just in Germany, the flying insects have reduced during the last 2 decades of about 80%. That means that our ecosystems are in real danger. And if this reduction of insects and of other species in the world is as progressive as it is observed currently, then I think in 100 or 200 years, most of our ecosystems will be dead. So I don't know. I was wondering, and this comes to my question, is the sustainable development approach holistic or radical enough to shift these developments towards another direction?
And on the second question, I would say just let's join forces to make it radical enough. Let's start today. Huh? And on the other question, the first one, I would say we didn't give you any analysis of the biodiversity situation in Egypt. What you are mentioning in Germany is very nice and soft if I compare it to what is happening to us in Egypt. So you are still in a good state, and the pressure is on our side. Huh? But, I mean, let us also not overestimate us and the time we are in. Huh? In the thousands of years of human development, this is a spike. Huh? The last 200 years since the religion of Adam Smith came in, and today, a spike with unbelievable achievements. We wouldn't sit here without this, but also with unbelievable challenges. And it's always these two sides are the two sides of the coin. And now I think in this regard, we in the East and the Orient are slightly in a better position than the West. Because we believe in Allah and we believe in the Creator, and so we have a little bit of confidence that He will not just push us out of this planet in no time. So, Yani, we pray every day 5 times and do what we can. And the rest is on Him, Yani. But don't get nervous, huh? Just work on it.
Okay, we have you, and you.
So thank you for this discussion. First of all, I'm Nuray from University of Göttingen and also participant of RLC workshop this week. My question is to Mr. Arbenz. I know that there are some alternative ways of organic production for farmers which does not need certification, such as participatory guarantee systems, PGS. And I was wondering whether IFOAM has some kind of policy implications to support or to accelerate such kind of organic production systems. And second question goes to Mr. Abouleish. I wonder how did you find a solution to the water, which is a big challenge in a desert while you start production?
Really good question. It was on my list.
Well, as I mentioned before, actually, organic is not by the way it's verified, it's by the way actually it's produced. And in fact, we do promote actually quite a number of systems, and the participatory guarantee system, PGS, is actually one of them. In Germany, it's a bit more difficult because it's all regulated by the EU, but many countries, Egypt, one of them, has actually no regulation. That means there is actually a bit more freedom from the government to establish such systems. And particularly in African, Latin American context, actually, we really promote these kind of systems because there are systems which bring together the producing community and the consuming community, and so that they can interact and actually build a common food system rather than rely on anonymous products on the shelf. So in that sense, yes, but it's not only PGS, also we're talking about non-certified at all, but also all kind of actually ways that there is a relationship built. And I think that's the main keyword, the relationship between those produce and consume.
Now, in regard to water, Egypt is the gift of the Nile, obviously. And 90-something% of all the water resource of Egypt is coming from the Nile. So we are reclaiming desert with the beneath the earth Nile branches. Huh? You can imagine that the Nile is above, and then you have this funnel going down. And when you are
microphone, we need the microphone.
When you are 10 kilometers away from the Nile, you still can go down 200 meters or 300 meters and reach the water of the Nile. Huh? So we are basically working with Nile water everywhere in Egypt, but at different depth from the distance from the Nile. And there is a very small other option, which is the groundwater. And there we have this Nubian aquifer, the biggest in the world, between us and Chad and Libya and Sudan. And there, I think we need a lot of research and studies to really know how quick is this resource renewing and how much can we take out without depleting it. But this is a research part. Our current water source, even if it doesn't show from the Nile, but it's the under-earth Nile which we are using.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, good evening. My name is Abtamu from Ethiopia at University of Bonn. Thank you for the discussion that you gave us this evening. My question goes
Please hold the microphone.
Okay. My question goes to the gentleman next to you. You mentioned, during your speech, you mentioned that energy is one of the important factors for the sustainable development. Yes, I agree that energy is a key driver for the sustainable rural development, whether it be agriculture, health, education. Energy matters a lot. And you also mentioned that powering agriculture. I know this technology from the GIZ. I would rather call it powering Africa, because in Africa we have year-round solar production, solar radiation, where we can apply this technology for solar panel production, solar pumping.
Your question, please?
So my question is, because there is the financial and technical gap in Africa, although it is hugely demanded by private and public sector, how could you organization support this, for especially who are engaging smallholder or medium level entrepreneur who are engaging this technology?
Yeah.
Short answer, please.
To give you just one example, what is happening right now at the moment, you know KfW, the German Development Bank, and they have a daughter in Cologne, DEG, Deutsche Investitions- und Entwicklungsgesellschaft. Those banks, they are right now starting so-called German desks in a few countries in Africa. One has been established in Kenya, the second one will be established in Nigeria, and there will be more in other countries. At these desks, small and medium-sized local enterprises can go there, because those desks, they work together with local banks. So what happens? The small and medium-sized company goes to its local bank in Kenya or Nigeria, and the local bank has then the connection through the German desk to DEG in Cologne. And this makes funding available to the local farmers, but in the end provided by KfW DEG from Germany.
After
this is
filling in forms.
No, I mean, the point is that the local company is not dealing with DG in Cologne. They're dealing with their local bank, where they are going anywhere because they have their account. It's the same if you are living here in Bonn, you have your account at Sparkasse or Volksbank. And so you know your bank much better than if you have to fill a form for a national program whatsoever. So the program means that they bring the funding closer to the company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, was that sufficient to you? I have to be strict on the time because Mr. Abouleish needs to catch a plane, so that's why. Please, the last question. Yeah. Quick.
Hi, my name is Austin Pullman, and I'm an engineering student from Los Angeles, California. My question is for mostly Mr. Abouleish and Mr. Arbenz.
We need the microphone close to your mouth.
Sorry. So you spoke earlier about the ability for organic farming to feed the growing needs of the population. And I'd like to know how you would propose combating a lack of genetic diversity and disease in crop populations in the future, especially without the use of pesticides or GMOs.
This is a topic for another session,
panel discussion. Yes.
But I just want to put your attention to one small fact. 1 gram, not a teaspoon, but a fifth of a teaspoon of soil in California. How many microorganisms do you believe are in this 1 gram? 600 million. Okay, so now have this in your mind, and then when we speak about technology and when we speak about the problems of the earth, of the wheat, of the diseases, it goes the same with insects and microorganisms and bacteria and fungal and. Nature, we do not know anything about nature yet, and there is a lot to explore and a lot to research, and to really do on the highest possible level agriculture, you have to explore all these kind of questions first. And I think there are a lot of answers in this research, and there are a lot of possibilities. And I think that the agriculture for the future will look totally different, include all these microorganisms and many, many other things in our concept of agriculture. And be not so materialistic and straight and linear and this and 1 and 1 equals 2 and all these kind of things. Dare to think that 1 and 1 can equal 100. And take this as the starting point. And then ask yourself how. And don't sleep about the question.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I would just quickly also answer this one. I think we heard it now twice. Biodiversity is maybe even more the elephant in the room than climate change. So it's true. We have to rely on a big biodiversity. And there are concerns in that one. You refer to the microorganisms in soil, but very often we refer also to the diversity in plants, particularly crop plants and also animals in which we work with. And there are many legislation that go actually here in a totally wrong direction by regulating those varieties, by allowing only few varieties which have to pay high taxes, which are registered and so on. So in fact, we need actually systems that grow biodiversity, and there are beautiful systems, for example, rice farmers in the Philippines, how they deal with that, or seed banks of many, there are many initiatives actually. The positive message is that you can also grow biodiversity. It's not only that it is lost forever, that when you know if the Siberian tiger is vanishing, we have lost it forever. That is not only this story, actually. You can breed diversity also with the systems, particularly when farmers actually grow their seeds for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this inspiring words, inspiring thoughts. Thinking out of the box, I guess, is something that you really, really try to bring into this room and bring into this discussion. 1 and 1 equals 100. Okay, and now let's find out how. And your optimism is really great and really inspiring. Thank you very much, Mr. Arbenz. Thank you very much for the insights into how the German cooperation works. You have the opportunity to talk to our panelists for a few minutes with you, Mr. Abouleish, because you have to catch the plane quite, I think, in a few minutes. But you have the chance to speak to Mr. Arbenz and Mr. Weber and have a glass of organic fruit juice, I guess. And yeah, so thanks a lot and applause for you.